Good morning, everyone. We're just admitting folks from the waiting room and we'll get started in just a second here. We've still got some folks coming into the waiting room. Okay, I can hear the chimes of Old Main, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I'll be admitting a few more folks as they show up this morning in the waiting room. And Neil, if you could just take that over for just 1 second while I introduce the session, that would be great. So I am Melissa.
Yeah, I think Kaylin will do that. She's a co-host. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm Melissa Johnson. I'm Associate Vice President and Associate Dean in Undergraduate Education. And I'm very happy to be working with Denise Poole and Chelsea Walls and all the grad assistants and the Student Success Center. And very excited about the event today. So I thank you all for coming and participating, and particularly for visiting this session, which we are going to experience together. This is the Mentorship as a Transition Tool for First-Gen Students of Color. And our presenter today is Millie Rodriguez, who works in the Multicultural Resource Center. And so I will give you a brief introduction of Millie in just a minute, but first I want to just give you some housekeeping reminders for the session itself. We are recording the session today, and that recording will be available on a Hoover platform for 3 months following the event. This is a Zoom meeting format that we are in today. It was chosen to encourage audience participation. You have access to turn on your camera and microphone, but we ask that you stay muted unless you are invited to participate. And today what we would like to do in terms of participation is if everyone could open up Hoover in another browser window or on another device. There's a Q&A and chat feature that's available in the Hoover platform, and we would like to take questions today through that platform instead of through the Zoom platform, so that those things are also recorded and available for attendees who weren't able to attend this presentation. Please don't start the recording, the session, because there'll be feedback, but you can just go into the session to use the Q&A and chat features and then just exit the session. So you're only watching it. I'm sorry, you're in the session. Disregard that. Please use the Hoover platform Q&A and chat feature to ask questions today rather than raising your hand and speaking. Please don't forget to engage in the community activities on the Hoover platform. There's lots of polls and icebreakers and fun things to do on the platform. There will be a meetup at 5 o'clock today if you are in town and would like to meet in person. We also have closed captioning for this session, and if you would like to be able to see the closed captioning, there is a button at the bottom of your Zoom window. You can enable the closed caption. We will be taking questions at the end of Millie's presentation, and Neil Johnson and I, no relation, will be facilitating the questions through the Hoover platform as well. At the end of the session, you're going to be asked to do a session evaluation, and I will tell you how to access that as we close out today. I'm delighted to introduce Millie Rodriguez to you all this morning. She's a college counselor in the Multicultural Resource Center, which is part of educational equity here at Penn State. She is a Penn State alum. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education, and she also earned a Master of Science in Education from the University of Scranton and a post-baccalaureate certificate in educating individuals with autism from Penn State as well. She was an English teacher for 14 years prior to coming back to Penn State in 2017. And she does a lot of volunteer work. She's a volunteer parent mentor and advocate for parents of children with special needs and a volunteer ESL teacher and tutor. I think the most interesting thing about Millie's background is that she benefited from the MRC as a student, and she's come back to give back. because that was such a formational experience for her as a student herself. So please welcome Millie, and we will get started with the presentation.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. It's pretty overwhelming. I do want to say first and foremost that this presentation is based on information that I've learned, my experiences and my interactions with my students and what we do here at the MRC. And so I hope that it'll be more of a discussion. If there's anything that I hope that you will share. If there's anything that needs to be corrected, I hope that you will feel free to do so. I am not an expert, but this is just something that's very much a passion of mine because, as Melissa said, I did benefit from having a mentor at the Multicultural Resource Center when I was an undergrad. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, is that good? Everybody see? And I just need to switch views. Okay, there we go. So yes, this session is about mentorship as a transition tool for first-gen students of color. And again, I work with the Multicultural Resource Center. We target students who are first-gen, who are from underrepresented backgrounds, who are transfer students or change of campus students, and also support students who have earned a 2.3 or less GPA. So we'll go over a little bit of the first-gen barriers. I do have a lot of information about that, but I think that a lot of us are familiar. And then just talking a little bit more specifically about first-gen barriers for students of color. The first-gen students of color transition to college, and then mentoring and using mentoring as that transition tool. So a lot of information here. Prior to even arriving at college, we know that first-gen students face a lot of barriers. So the one thing that's important to remember is that first-gen doesn't always mean low income, but they are often both true. So obviously financial constraints are a barrier. We also know that a lot of times first-gen students, because of their low-income status, are also attending underfunded schools, which impact the curriculum. So our first-gen students many times don't have access to dual enrollment or AP classes, or maybe just very limited AP classes. So for example, one of the school districts up the road has a lot, but not as many as State College High. And then just a few more miles up the road, there's maybe just a handful of AP classes offered at that school district. So definitely another thing to realize too is that not all first-gen low SES students are from urban areas. They can be from very rural areas as well.
Especially in this area.
Yes. So they also experience confusion and some disorientation when attending college as a first-gen student because of the hidden curriculum, not knowing what to expect, lack of support in navigating college. So I know for my children, I was able to say, hey, this is what you can expect. This is what you need to do. Here's where you need to go to talk to whoever. And especially my one child is attending Penn State. So, okay, no, you don't need to talk to the registrar for that. You need to talk to the bursar. And first-gen students don't have family. Well, a lot of times they don't have parents who know that difference or know how to help them navigate. And particular risk factors are low SES status, single parent household, a pattern of dropout behavior in families, negative school experiences, attending two or more high schools, or a C or lower average. And the risk is that they are more likely to drop out after starting college. Once matriculated, first-gen students of color, well, first-gen students in general, but especially students of color, experience a lot of imposter syndrome, and it's aggravated by sometimes a hostile environment and microaggressions, other students asking, oh, how did you get in here? Did you get a scholarship? Is it, did you get a scholarship because you're poor, or, oh, you're meeting the quota? So that really plays with the student mind, and causes students to feel like they don't belong. Coming to a university like Penn State, a PWI, a lot of times students will experience culture shock. And again, it's not always, but many times students are coming to us from more urban areas. And so coming to State College is like, what? I remember when I was at a Commonwealth campus, I started in Scranton. And I had friends who had come down to University Park a semester before me, and they said, oh, wait till you get here. It's just like New York City. And I grew up in New York City. When I got here, don't get me wrong, I love the campus. I love it. I mean, I wouldn't be working here if I didn't love Penn State, but it's not New York City. And so I had to ask my friend if they had ever even been to a city. So it was definitely a culture shock. I felt a lot of isolation as a change of campus student, because it was like starting over again. A lot of students of color, because of the culture shock, because of feeling isolated, then also experience depression, anxiety, and of course, stress because of the rigor, because of being underprepared academically. And they're not sure what they're missing, and they don't know what college has to offer or who even to ask. So that's definitely a barrier. A lot of times students of color have been raised to be humble, have been raised to not question authority, not to ask for more than what they are given. And so they just feel like they are going to go with the flow and don't understand that they can ask for more. They can, just question the status quo. And of course, then persistence to completion. We know overall across the United States that from what I've read, between 24 and 27% of students who are first gen actually persist to graduation. So that is very, very low. And so that's why we're here. That's why there is a first gen student support summit and a Student Success Center, why there's the Multicultural Resource Center, why there's the Paul Robeson Cultural Center, because we need to support our students. So one way, one aspect of supporting students of color is in the transition to college. Students need to be able to separate and have that separation from who they were and who they are becoming. They also need to experience validation once they are here at college and also be involved. So separation is kind of difficult at times because students of color often come from households that are very family oriented, very enriched with culture and traditions. And then coming to Penn State PWI, again, the culture shock and just not being able to find where they belong. So a lot of students experience guilt over leaving family behind and adjusting to this new unfamiliar normal for them. However, we know that separation is necessary to find independence and also to become socially engaged. If a student is too tied to home, then they can never fully become themselves and experience everything that the the campus experience has to offer. And so that is one of the, I guess, dangers with not with being, what am I trying to say? Being a commuter student. And I think that if students of color, I think all students honestly should live on campus, but we just can't do that. But the more that students are able to live on campus and willing to live on campus, the healthier their experience and the stronger their bond to the university will be. However, because students of color have that strong family bond, it's important not to encourage a clean break, but rather just a healthy distance. And it's sometimes kind of frustrating because they have family members who don't really understand what they're experiencing. Like I said before, a lot of times, especially in Latina households, students experience a mother or father who will say, well, we want you to go to college. Yeah, that's great. But why do you have to go so far away? Why do you have to leave home? Don't you want to stay and help take care of the family? And sometimes there is not only guilt, but also this shift in relationships because the student is recognizing their access to education when some of their families don't have that access. And what are they going to think of me? I personally experienced that as a student myself, and I have in my discussions with some of the students that I see, they have also expressed that they experience the same thing. They have family members who say, oh, who do you think you are? Oh, you think you're so special. You think you're so smart. And it's just this way to kind of preserve the family unit. And because I think a lot of times students of color have to recognize that they're coming into, again, this new normal and learning a new identity. And a lot of times the family is scared that this new identity or this increase in learning will change their child, change their family member, change the student to the point that they're unrecognizable and they just don't even know how to communicate or how to have a relationship. But that separation, again, needs to happen. And mentorship really helps because we can support the student while they're experiencing that transition. One of the ways to help a student with that separation and transition is to validate them. And so I took this quote right from one of my sources. Rendon said, institutional agents. So the difference between mentorship and for mentorship at large and mentorship for students of color. Students of color, again, don't know what's available to them or how to ask for it. So we, as professional staff, need to reach out and take that first step. So taking that first step towards helping students believe in themselves and their inherent capacity to learn. Again, because they are hearing all these different things and may start to doubt themselves. Let's see. The more students experience invalidating interactions, the more likely they are to drop out. And I think that's really important to understand because we don't even know sometimes what they're feeling. And so that's something that we can ask them directly. What is it that is causing you to struggle? Or what is it that is making this experience negative for you? I know that I totally lost my train of thought. Hold on a second. Because I'm looking at my notes. So one example, I'll give you two examples of invalidating experiences. And that is sometimes students will at NSO sign up for very late in the summer. And so then they don't have access to such a wide offering of classes. And so they will get stuck with the classes that nobody else wants. And somebody is actually okaying that schedule for them. And so I had a student who had chemistry, math, and biology in the first semester of their first year. And that is an invalidating experience because we haven't taken the time to learn. And so then the question also is, how do we learn? Are we able to take the time at NSO to say, oh, what was your high school experience like? What are you coming with? To know if they're academically ready. Again, they're not, a lot of students who are first gen are not academically ready to jump into biology, math 110, chem 110 right away. So another example of invalidating experiences are those weed out classes. And I'm not even going to go down that road because I have such problems with it. I think that some students wear it as a badge of honor, but it really is invalidating to students of color who really have a dream and cannot access it. And then are told because they can't pass that class, oh, maybe you should choose a different career. And then lastly, involvement. Many of us in higher ed already know Aston's theory of involvement, and it encourages co-curricular engagement, so students will learn and grow. First gen students want to get involved, but don't know how. And they often, growing up, didn't have the resources or opportunities to get involved, and that's why they don't know how. So I experienced that as a first gen student here, and I remember speaking with my Multicultural Resource Center counselor at the time. Actually, I don't know if anybody knows Maria Schmidt. She is now the Associate Dean in the College of Ed. She was my MRC counselor, and she said, okay, well, let's do this. And she learned about me. She knew that I was an adult learner. She really wanted to help me get involved because at that point I was like, oh, I don't even know where I am. I don't want to be here. And so knowing that I was an adult learner and that I had more, I guess, a more mature perspective of what student life should be like, encouraged me to get involved with student government and affinity groups in the Paul Robeson and also with UPAC, and really encouraged me to be a voice for other students of color, other orgs of color, so that we can have our place on campus as well. And so that encouraging students of color to find something that they can belong to and believe in and be an integral part of is super important, because engagement doesn't automatically equal integration. So just because they're involved doesn't mean they belong. So how do we get to know them to the point that we can encourage engagement that creates that belonging? And so I just wanted to share a couple of slides on retention rates and graduation rates. And this is why mentorship is so important. And you'll see down, I don't know if you can see my little cursor, but down under where it says race and ethnicity, Black or African American. And so from 2016, 2017, 2018, we can see what the graduation rates are for our students who identify as Black or African American in 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years from 2016. So 6 years would have been just this past May. And you can see that only 52.9% of our African American students who enrolled in 2016 graduated within 6 years. 33% graduated in 4 years, 47% graduated in 5 years. So there's definitely a need for support. And then the retention rates, you can see over the 3 years. So starting from first year to second year to third year, how many students of color are coming back? And let's find this chart is for students who identify as Asian. Numbers are higher and closely resemble the overall rate for all students, which is positive. Here is our Latina students. Again, kind of low, but not as low as our African-American students. And the retention rates are pretty high. Two or more races. And pretty similar to what we've seen before. American Indian and Alaska Native. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. So, mentoring students of color. One thing that I wanted to share is that a lot of time, again, first gen students often don't know what things are. They may have heard of a mentor, maybe they actually had one in high school, but they don't know what to expect at college as far as a mentoring relationship. And so I wanted to share a little story about how when I was teaching, I often did what a lot of other teachers did, which was to say, okay, the number one rule in the class is respect. So be respectful at all times, but respect means different things to different people. And so the way I think that a lot of students were coming to my classroom behaving with their family's definition of respect, which was not what I expected in my classroom. So I had to really be explicit about what does respect look like in my classroom? How can you show me respect? How can you show yourself respect? How can you show others respect? And once I was able to do that and clearly identify what the expectations are and what the definition is, I saw a drastic improvement in my classroom management needs year after year after year. And so I think when we have students who are coming to us, who, especially those students who have never had a mentor or who are students of color, they need to be explicitly told what are the mentee responsibilities. If you're going into this relationship, which we hope you will, and it is available, what do we expect? It's not going to just be an adult who's going to tell you what to do. It's not just going to be, somebody to chat with. There are specific goals. So what are the mentee responsibilities? Basically sharing with the student that they are responsible for participating in this relationship, meaning keeping their appointments, making sure that they are respecting their mentor's time. A lot of times they have in the past seen help seeking as threatening or harmful. And so if they're able to get past that and create this relationship, it'll help them in their future years, second, third, fourth year. So helping them understand what mentorability means, being open-minded, being adaptable, listening, maybe not always following, but understanding that the mentor in your life has experience and gives you this advice because it's what they believe is the best for you, for your best interest, and taking that advice or weighing it with their options and then going on. And then also persisting, being a part of that relationship. And then, of course, the mentor responsibilities, I think that goes without saying, we're there to create and cultivate a relationship with students that will give them the opportunity to always have somebody to go to for questions, problems, advice. Let's see. We are here to teach, guide, help shape, or set academic goals, serve as a positive role model, and also share of ourselves, share our experiences, and help them understand what navigating this college experience is like. We know that a lot of times students, if they're able to share the same cultural background as their mentor, it's a great response. It's a great advantage. It doesn't always happen, especially at a PWI like Penn State, but that's when we realize, okay, how can we adapt ourselves to make sure that we are meeting the needs of these students of color? And that includes continued bias training, becoming highly culturally aware, understanding what it's like to have grown up the way that they grew up. And that also includes asking a lot of questions. So then there are different types of mentors. And I just wanted to point this out really quickly because I thought it was really cool. Matthew Hagler did some research, and he found that mentors can be background, high contact, or high capital. And background means the people that the student interacts with just on a very intermittent basis. Then there are the high contact individuals that they talk to a lot. So maybe they talk to their advisor a lot, but they haven't created or grown close to that individual. And then high capital. So somebody that they go to see, they go to talk to quite often, they create a close relationship with that mentor. And then Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania has a program called Emerging Leaders Program. And they actually identify 3 different types of mentors. A peer mentor who is in the second year from a similar background who can help that first year student, first gen, navigate the campus. A mentor advisor that helps provide specific information about academic concerns, especially academic planning. And then a mentor from a shared background in whom they can build a relationship and who can provide emotional closeness, social and family support, and direction regarding campus resources. And that's exactly what the MRC it does. We also offer some academic support like limited tutoring availability. We share study skills, we do time management and coaching. Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to share about that whenever I have a student in my office talking, my goal is to create a friendship like I had with Maria, so that way the student knows that, and to be honest, when I got to Penn State and I met Maria, I actually was getting emails all the time saying, come see me, come see me, come see me. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll finally go see this woman. I don't know what she wants, but I'll go see. And then I saw this beautiful, lively, engaging woman who was from Puerto Rico, who looked a lot like me, very fair skin and dark hair. And I was like, whoa. Being a first gen myself, I'd never seen a Latina in a position of authority like that. And so it was very inspiring. And so that's what we try to do in the MRC. Okay, so thoughts and discussion time.
Thank you so much, Melly. That was so rich and helpful, I think, for so many of us. And we really appreciate you putting this together for us and bringing both your own perspective and your research and the things that you've learned from your students to us. We have quite a few questions, so I'm just going to start lobbing them at you, if that's okay.
Sure.
The first question is it necessary to be first gen yourself to successfully mentor a first gen student?
I don't think so. I think that even as a first gen myself, I often forget what it was like so long ago to be a first gen. But as long as we are aware of the challenges that they face and are willing to ask those hard questions. So, you know, and started and thinking outside the box. So asking questions that the student may not have even thought of. So I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of a specific example, but if you know the campus resources well, I think anybody can be a quality first-gen mentor.
Thank you, Millie. Another question that's very specific to the MRC. Can graduate students utilize the resources in the MRC? How do I direct my students there?
Yeah, so we typically serve undergraduate students, but we do have graduate students occasionally, as well as we don't typically serve international students, but we know that they also face some difficulties here, especially if they are first gen. So we don't turn anybody away. Anybody can come and talk to us. And the easiest way to have a student, we definitely are pretty much like constantly a drop-in. We don't have drop-in hours, but anybody can stop by, drop in, have talk to a student worker or one of us if we're available. The best way is to get in touch with the MRC by emailing mrc@psu.edu or calling our office to make an appointment. That way you can definitely make sure you have somebody to talk to. But yeah, we see everybody.
Thank you, Millie. And I would just like to also say in response to that question that the student organization First Gen Advocates was actually started by graduate students. And graduate students are very welcome in that student organization. That's a good place to get peer mentoring as well. For those of you in the audience, just a reminder, we are taking the questions in the Whova platform in the Q&A, which is to the right of the screen where you are watching the presentation. So if you have questions, please just pop them into the Q&A there. The next question for you, Millie, is how do we support students of color who may feel that they are being, a question was added and it disappeared, sorry. How do we support students of color who may feel that they are being watched closely for mistakes, or perhaps after a white faculty member has given them feedback, which may have been intended to be constructive, but was perceived as being watched for mistakes? In other words, once stereotype threat has been activated, how do we help students get beyond it?
Yeah, that is so difficult. I think that the first thing is to make sure that the student understands that they have to be receptive to constructive criticism, and especially a first-gen student who may not have, and a first-gen student of color who may not have had a lot of cross-cultural communication with somebody outside of their cultural background. So understanding that there are going to be times where constructive criticism will have to happen, but that I always couch it as professors are not educators a lot of times. So they may not have as much experience on how to share in a way that may, be as, what's the word I'm thinking of? Well, one of my prior supervisors always said, talk to me about impact versus intent. So sharing with your students that, okay, this may be how you received it, but was that really the professor's intent? So, and also understanding that the professors may, like the student, not have had a lot of cross-cultural communication and may not know to be sensitive. And so it's not always on the burden of the student to educate the professor or others, but to allow some grace. And I would definitely, if I had a student come to me with that, I would definitely point out intent versus impact.
Thank you, Millie. That's a very thoughtful answer. There's been some discussion in the chats as well about sort of the dilemma that advisors have in trying to put together that first semester schedule. And so
Mhm.
we also have a question about that. Do you have any recommendations for how advisors can balance the demands of the student's major, the lack of course availability, and potential financial restraints for summer courses to help students create a better first semester schedule than the one you gave as an example earlier?
Yeah, so I'm not too familiar with, what the limitations that advisor have to deal with, but I know for myself as a student and also from my experience, and also what I've shared with students is to, again, think outside the box. So instead of offering bio as a choice, maybe a different, there are a lot of courses that meet the natural sciences that are also very culturally sensitive and oriented. And so one of those courses may be, if it fits with the students' degree completion goals, maybe would work better for them than trying to do this science with a lab. So for example, when I was a student, I took biology as sex. It was all about the reproductive system, which was so much easier for me than chemistry. When I was a student, I took symbolic logic versus math. So really going to encouraging students, if they can, to go to the bulletin and find classes that might be more interesting to them, that they would be more engaged in. I know that it's hard with some majors, like, for example, engineering, just, jumping right in from the get-go. And that's kind of part and parcel of that major if the student wants to stick with it. But just helping, I think it's really important to figure out and spend a lot more time. And I'm not saying that advisors are not doing this, so I don't want to be offensive at all, but taking time to find out what their academic background looked like and what their interests are, what their strengths are, so that way we can build a semester that's going to be beneficial for them and help them succeed.
Thank you, Dawn. We've got a couple more questions and it looks like we've got 9 minutes left, so I think we can take at least one, maybe two more. What would you recommend that individuals or teams do to start a mentorship program for first-gen students in general, but also particularly for marginalized?
I'm sorry, I missed part of the beginning.
Okay, what would you recommend that individuals or teams do to start a mentorship type program for first-gen students in general, but also particularly for marginalized students?
Yeah, so if I could wave my magic wand, we'd have a lot more affinity type learning living communities on campus that are not necessarily tied to an academic college. So like a social justice house or something like that. If we could, again, wave that magic wand, creating a very broad mentorship program that is, I think that a lot of at Penn State, it seems to me that a lot of the things are segmented or, compartmentalized within the colleges. And if we could just bring it all together, even with Fast Start through the Alumni Association, bringing it all together and making it, I think that when you put it all together, it makes it so much more available to students. And we have Black alumni associations all over the country. We can call on and, we know we can do Zoom, so students can have a mentor that's virtual rather than in person. Somebody who has already experienced this, the 4 years or however long it took them to complete their degree. So yeah, if I could just wave my wand, I would definitely have some kind of mix of the TRIO talent search, a mix of LEAP, a mix of NSO, extended NSO, some bridge programs that a lot of the scholars programs do, just throw it all out there. There are so many different things that we can do to help support our students, and they are really a small, I think maybe 6% of our student population is African American, 7.5% are Latina, 9% are Asian. So we don't have large populations. We could do it if we could just wave our magic wand, but yeah, there's so many things we can do. I'm sorry, I'm just so long-winded sometimes.
Well, I am in favor of getting Millie a magic wand. I don't know about.
Yes.
And I think that you kind of answered this question with your magic wand question, but I'll just ask it in case there's something else you want to add.
Okay.
It's tough to move the retention needle with programs that reach 20 or 30 students. How do we reach all first-gen students and provide the needed support?
Can you repeat that again?
Sure. It's tough to move the retention needle with programs that only reach 20 or 30 students. How do we reach all first-gen students and provide the needed support?
Okay, yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. I think, again, maybe centralizing our mentorship and student success centers. I don't know, maybe that'll be part of what happens with the restructuring that's going on. But if we're able to meet the larger number of students, they could also interact a little bit more and find someone to lean on that can help them. Yeah, it is very isolating when some of the programs are so small. And so if we could, again, I mean, that's what I think. I don't know how feasible it is at a University Park campus that's so big. We have, like I highlighted before, the Muhlenberg College Emerging Leaders Program, but they are so much smaller. So if we could do something like that and house it all in one, have all the different aspects in one place, I think that's what would be the most helpful to not only students of color, but all first-gen students.
Thank you very much, Millie. So there are some other questions, but I don't think we have time to get to all of them. There's some chat about living learning communities. If you're interested in that, there are some folks in the chat sort of coalescing around that. If you all want to get together, maybe in one of the speed networking that's coming up. Just a comment that folks love the personal stories, Millie, and they thought that was really effective. So thank you all so much for coming today. And let's give Millie a virtual round of applause for this great presentation. We really appreciate it, Millie, and we appreciate you bringing your experiences and your insights and the research to us. I just have one announcement for everybody before you leave the session today. There will be a survey. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. Okay. There will be a session evaluation. To access the session evaluation, you must go to the session agenda page in Whova and click on the rate session link. Session evaluations can also be accessed in Whova by clicking on the surveys main navigation button, then session feedback. And you can scroll to find the session there as well. So you need to go back to the name of the session to give the session evaluation feedback. But thank you all once again for attending, and I hope that you very much enjoy the rest of your day. And I hope to see some of you tonight at Federal Tap House as we celebrate a successful summit. It was great to see you all, and thanks once again very much, Millie, for this wonderful, informative presentation.
Thank you all.
I think
Thank you, Rory.
stop recording.